In the last chapter, we triumphed over the wind sorcerer Zels and retrieved our second elemental gem, the Wind Jade. Thanks to this, West Karma's magic wind is restored and protection is returned to Normoon and Larapool. In Chapter 3, we'll shift our attention towards resolving the torrenting waters of the Loch Kildare, so we're able to pick up our father's new trail, having been informed he was traveling toward Limeland from Leonardo. After trekking from the perilous Blue Cave, we'll find ourselves at the center of the Loch Kildare, near the mysterious Isle of Skye, where we'll meet the characters Colleen and Kiliak. Most importantly, we'll be meeting another major recurring character, the mysterious spirit tamer of old, Epona. Returning to Larapool, Lila will offer praise and thank us for assisting her. She'll explain that along with being the protector of the town, she is also a messenger for someone named Epona of the Crystal Valley. There's apparently nothing that she doesn't know, and she wishes to speak with us now that we've returned from Normoon with the Wind Jade. Lila requests that we follow her outside of the inn, and to the crystal well just outside once we're ready to know more. Stepping outside of the inn and into the well's wall space, Lila will elaborate further. Upon releasing the protective waters outside, the road opens to the sacred Water Crystal Valley. However, the path to get there is through a vast labyrinth of icy tunnels known as the Blue Cave, an ancient pathway filled with powerful demons and dead ends. Lila insists that we forge ahead, as this path will ensure that we're a genuine magician, worthy of even greater challenges that lay before us. The mysterious Epona waits on the other side, and every second counts for us to restore the serenity to the loch, as well as catching up to our father's trail. Blue Cave is one of the most difficult areas in Quest. The monsters are powerful and numerous, and it's easy to get confused or turned around if you aren't paying attention. Luckily, there are a few items left behind along with arrows carved into the ice, presumably by Epona, to help guide our way. Just when it seems as though the cave never truly ends, a bright light draws us into the peaceful Crystal Valley, with a home nestled against the high ridges of glistening snow. Inside the home is Epona and her owl-like familiar Chappie. Chappie is only there at the moment to offer us a short rest after our long journey from within the Blue Cave, but Epona will share some of the most plot-crucial elements in the story, both now and later. Toward the end of the game, we'll be revisiting much of Epona's dialogue since she's a source of so much lore and context, but there are several things worth elaborating on just based off of our first conversation with her. To begin, Epona is pleased to meet you at last, as she's heard of your victories throughout the land, presumably through Lila, but I expect the Grand Abbot as well. More on that in a later chapter. She introduces herself and asks if you truly hold one of the elemental gems, stating that only a true magician will be able to use it. She goes on to say that the Eltale book has indeed been stolen by someone, and that 1,000 years ago, a war broke out over possession of the book, long before anyone knew of the book's true capabilities. The Eltale book must never be opened by anyone, and if its power is released, it will be the end of everything. Therefore, it must be returned to the monastery for safekeeping. Before we move on, let's break down what's already been said so that we're all on the same page. First is on the subject that only a true magician will be able to use the elemental gems. If you've seen part 1 of this story explained section, both Solvering and Zels are magicians that had used the elemental gems for personal reasons. At face value, this would appear that Solvering and Zels were true magicians since they were able to use the elemental gems. However, I disagree, and I think this is a piece of the puzzle that's often left untouched. Zels and Solvering were ultimately destroyed by Brian despite the wicked power they gained from the elemental gems that I concluded was an effect of the gems' evil influence they have on the ones who wield them. Remember that one of the primary purposes of the gems is that they hold fractions of the Eltale book's power, an artifact of such evil that it can pave the world's destruction just by being opened. However, simply because they can be used this way, doesn't mean that that is their intended use. In fact, the way that they've been used by the villains thus far is an unintended consequence of their existence. In my view, a true magician, as Epona says, can use the elemental gems the way that the great spirits who created them intended. Remember that when Solvering and Zels wielded these gems, it upset the balance of the elements in Keltland, causing grief and chaos across the land. Their true purpose to be used isn't made clear until toward the end of the game, and when we reach that point, we'll pick up where we left off here. The important thing to keep in mind is that Solvering and Zels were not true magicians. They did not use the elemental gems properly, and if anything, The elemental gems used them, desperate magicians who were easily influenced by the gems. The other area to expand upon is when she mentions that the Eltale book must never be opened. There are future references in the dialogue that the Eltale book can only be used by one that is worthy, but I believe this is a divisive rumor based on people naturally being drawn to the book's power, similarly to the elemental gems. A good comparison would be like how in Lord of the Rings, people are drawn to the power of the One Ring, and how some, even knowing full well of the ring's evil, are convinced that in the right hands, the ring could be used as a tool for good. It's something to chew on for now, and something we'll revisit again in a later chapter in the future. Regardless of these points, Epona asks for us to step into the other room, which will transport us toward the Loch Kildery. There, we'll meet the water sorceress Colleen, who protects the gem of the water spirit. Once we borrow it from her, we're to return to Epona for what's next. We wouldn't be able to sail through the loch regardless due to the water's strange behavior landlocking Kellen's people in West Karma, so it similarly works in our favor to go there and ask Colleen if she knows a solution. Stepping through the room and activating the teleporter does transport us to the loch, but instead of taking us to Colleen, we're planted onto a ship in the middle of the lake. This is where we'll encounter the pirate captain Kiliak, just as surprised as we are that we're aboard his ship. He explains that the seas are strange these days, with waves as tall as masts tossing ships around. Whether their intentions are good or not, he and his crew take it upon themselves to brave the treacherous waters to search for a sorceress who performs water magic somewhere known as the Isle of Skye within the loch. Seeing as we're a magician, instead of forcing us to walk the plank, he asks for our help speaking with her once they find the isle. Heading inside the ship, we're lucky to find out that Kiliak's crew seems to agree with him, and believes that we may be able to help calm the water as well, so we're allowed to rest below deck until they reach their destination. While Brian is resting, I'd like to take the time to answer a common question on why it is Epona's transportation circle didn't take us directly to the Isle of Skye, and instead planted us on the ship. I believe that due to the magic that's been causing the water to behave so strangely, it's possible that this same magic could have interfered with the magic used to take us here, since there is a teleportation circle in the Isle of Skye that takes us directly back to Epona's house. Moving on, once Brian returns above deck, the ship will have docked on the Isle of Skye, a small island with a single rustic home. Leaving the ship and heading inside, we'll find Colleen, water sorceress and protector of the water jewel. Kiliak will first explain what he's interpreted from her, that the priceless treasure Colleen was supposed to protect was stolen. Apparently, the thief escaped to the bottom of the lake, through a transportation circle toward the top of the island, sealing it behind them with a magic barrier that only a powerful magician can break through. Colleen will give us further context after introducing herself and taking note that, judging by our staff, we must be from the monastery. She's understandably annoyed at the pirate who's shown up blaming her for the jewel's theft, and for the lake's torrenting waters. She knows the thief is the one who's been riling up the waves, and that the thief had originally only stolen the gem to toss it into the bottom of the lake. Colleen's magic isn't powerful enough to reach that far into the lake, nor is she a skilled enough magician to break through the barrier the thief created to reach the bottom and retrieve the gem. Thus, it's left up to Brian to climb the cliff behind Colleen's home and break the barrier that leads to the bottom of the Loch Kildery. Scaling the cliff, Brian can break through the barrier seamlessly by stepping through, instantly transporting him to the bottom of the loch. I've tried to piece together a reason why Brian can breathe underwater for this section, and I can only conclude that Brian's magic, to a very limited degree, has a level of autonomy when it comes to preserving his life. Comparison can be drawn to the way he's transported to his last resting location when he's defeated in battle, but it's a stretch trying to bridge a minor story element with a main feature of the game. I originally hypothesized it was Colleen's doing, but she is surprised when you return that you managed to break through the barrier, and while it could be on Epona's account, there's virtually no proof that she stepped in to help here, so it's really impossible to say. Climbing up the short pathway of the lake's floor, we'll encounter the water crystal's thief, a strange aquatic creature named Nepty. She's furious that you've broken through the barrier so easily, and assumes you've done this to confront her. She intends to use the water jewel to become queen of the world, and how humans will throw themselves at her feet and beg for mercy. She clearly has it out for humankind, and she'll begin by testing her amplified water magic by way of the water jewel on you. Nepty, a name similar to Neptune, is one of the more ambiguous bosses in Quest, but I still believe that there are some clues to her motives. The root of her frustration seemed to stem from her distaste or distrust of humans, and I find it interesting that, based on Colleen's dialogue, Nepty initially only stole the water jewel to toss it into the lake. I believe the reason for this is that she only meant to annoy Colleen, learning from someone or something that she guarded something so precious to begin with. Following this idea, it's possible that when she returned to the base of the Lock Kildare, she discovered what a powerful tool the water crystal was, unknowingly releasing its power onto herself and the Great Lake. Having initially begun using her bolstered powers to annoy sailors and fairies on the Kildare, the disbalance of the elements caused the Lock Kildare to begin behaving bizarrely as the gem corrupted her more over time, amplifying her animosity towards humans and the lake's destructive power. If this is true, I almost feel sorry for Nepty being swept up in something she didn't realize was so dangerous, but we'll never truly know what the real order of events was once she's defeated. Regardless, we'll return to Colleen and Kiliak to report our success in the battle with the water jewel in hand. Colleen will conclude that you can be entrusted with the water jewel due to our success and allows us to take it back to Epona, only asking that we take Kiliak with us when we go, who has grown fond of teasing her. With the mission successful and the water back to normal now that Nepty is out of the picture, we'll step through the back room and take the teleporter there back to the Crystal Valley. Now that we have the third elemental gem, Epona will explain a bit more about the purpose the elemental gems serve. First, like I've explained in several areas over the course of this section, the elemental gems contain fractions of the Eltale book's power. If one is not worthy, overwhelming forces will be released. If we use our strength correctly, however, we can triumph over anything. She explains further that since the moment we picked up the gem, we were the spirits chosen, but that she would not have wished such a thing on someone so young. With that, she tells us we can return to town to continue our search for our father. This chapter is where many story elements begin tying together thanks to Epona's wisdom. Our main goal is still the same as it's always been, in that we're searching for our father, but we're quickly becoming wrapped up in more and more strange events as we close the distance. Epona explained that we've been chosen by the spirits, but that she wouldn't wish such a thing on someone as young as us. What could this mean? Is there a danger that we're yet unaware of growing as we collect the gems? I don't think even Epona understands yet what lies beyond the horizon, and the challenges that await us there. In the next chapter, we'll finally leave West Karma and sail towards East Limeland to chase our father's latest trail we'd learned from Leonardo and Normoon. Chapter 4 is filled with answers, but also questions, so I hope you'll join me as we discover them together. Thanks for watching.